Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today we have Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Do you think there's anything in the news we could talk about today? It's so boring, nothing happening. The economy is calm, everybody's thriving, and employment rates are going up, all the wars are going to end. But we'll have to talk. The one thing is, no substitute. I love sports, I participated, but I don't talk about sports. I don't keep up with the team. The last team I watched was the Pittsburgh Pirates when I lived in Pittsburgh. But anyway, I think if we look around, that statement I opened with is probably false. I think there are probably lots of things. And unfortunately, some of this stuff is very significant, and it'll probably be around for a while. But we've also seen some positive things, and that's what we'll talk about today, with a little bit of caution too. But there is a lot of influx. There's all kinds of attitudes popping up, but the markets are not calm, I would say that. Even though there's good statistics there, and they always seem to be able, I think, manipulate statistics so that the markets aren't quite as bad if there's bad news. Today the news was basically, for investors, not too bad. But if you look at the indicator that I've watched for since 1971 especially, and that is, what does the price of gold do? No, I shouldn't say the price of gold. What is the value of the dollar doing? What is happening to the reserve currency of the world? And I would say it's not a very steady currency. It doesn't deserve the reputation of being a reserve currency of the world. So this is something that you know is very important. And that day in 1971, when the gold window was closed, it was really a big deal for me, and it turned out to be a big deal in the economy. Gold was illegal. The pretend value was $35 an ounce, and that next decade was huge. Gold going from $35 an ounce up to $800 an ounce. And now, you know, in spite of all my concerns and warning and saying, do this, get enough metals and protect against the coming deficits and spending. You know, it still is hard for me to say, you know, gold is almost $3,000 an ounce. See, even that, you know, is amazing. But it was predictable, it's understandable, and that is one of the reasons we partners with Birch Gold, because they're in the business of trying to help people, you know, protect themselves with investments in gold. So if anybody viewing this program is interested in learning more about what Birch Gold has to say, they can contact Birch Gold through looking at the number on the screen, and that is Ron 989898. And Birch Gold will send you some materials to introduce and give you some ideas of how you can get out of regular stocks, IRAs, and different things without paying taxes and just a transfer over. So that's technical. Regular IRAs, you're not allowed to do it, to put gold in it, but in these special accounts created by the government, they're permissible. So if you are interested in trying to balance out and have some protection, the one thing I can tell you for sure, there is no perfect protection. But I'll tell you what, there's a permanent damage if you don't get some protection. So that is one step you could make to find out what your options might be. And I think the whole thing is that the people understand and know this, and yet they don't know exactly what to do. And so I advise it. It's a good idea, but I do it with some reservation, because nothing the government ever does or gets involved with. You know, you might have said that for 42 years after the Depression started, gold, gold, gold. You weren't even allowed to own gold. So I always say, I don't give advice on investments. I talk about the economy, and obviously that I have people looking at gold as a measurement of what's going on. But after doing all the things that I think are good, I try to participate in things to protect against all the trends that are going on. But ultimately, the most important investment we make, And I try my best at that, and that is invest some time in promotion of liberty. I think that is what we really need. So we're here for that purpose on the Liberty Report, but we're also here to talk about the issues. One of the big things going on, and Daniel and I talked about it yesterday, is USAID. And the more we learn about that, the bigger it gets. And it's such a thing on going on how much control there was in it. And the one we're talking about is how USAID got involved in the propaganda, going up to the state of war in Ukraine, how they manipulate things. It's going on for a long, long time. And some of the benefits are sneaky. Who would have ever suspected it? I think it's sneakier than people realize, because they can look, eventually, if we have an audit, the sneakiness of the Federal Reserve System, how to help out our friends and manipulate the media and this sort of thing. So there's a lot going on, and this is huge. But there's a hint that what the new administration is doing is very, very valuable, because I like to go back to the basics. Why don't you just read the Constitution and follow it? But first, people don't read as well as they used to, and they might not do it. But it is something that we have to do. We have to realize that there is an answer to these problems, and that is not easy. But right now, though, I think the administration, I think for the most part, their heart is in the right place. I think they're supporting this, but I keep my fingers crossed, because I've heard some of these stories before, not quite as eloquently as they are issued today, but these arguments were made for cutting back. We got to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, And if it was a minor vote in the Congress, I always thought, sure, we should. But I'm not expecting that to happen. I have a little bit more expectations today that something will happen. But can you imagine what would happen if they got rid of 96% of what USAID is doing? That would be a big step forward, but there would still be a lot of other things to deal with. And really, it sounds huge, and how are you ever going to do this piecemeal? I don't think you should even expected to do it piecemeal, because you have to change the attitude and the prevailing attitude of the people, that they rather live in a free society than one in which the government dictates to us at the expense of our liberties. Chris, that's all I have to say today, but now I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, yeah, I agree, Dr. Paul. Yeah, the first few weeks, we can't really complain about the Trump administration outside of, let's say, some of the stuff he has been saying on foreign policy, such as U.S. taking over Gaza. But this is President Trump. He is Mr. Art of the Deal. We have to hope that that's part of his Art of the Deal rhetoric, because that's weird. And but when it comes to domestically what is happening, you can't complain. DOGE is ripping through the government like a tornado. It is quickly identifying and cutting and actually doing these things. Like you mentioned, Dr. Paul, 97% of USAID being cut. That's incredible so quickly. We're only a few weeks in here, and it's actually happening. And like you and Daniel covered it, so many people have been wondering, how is it possible, especially during COVID, that all the media, they say the same exact things in the same exact words. And now we're seeing that they're all just financed by our taxpayer dollars. I mean, we paid for our own propaganda. That's pretty pathetic. But it's all coming back to them, which is a very good thing. They're being cut. This nonsense is being ended. So far, these first 2 weeks, DOGE, President Trump, they're doing good things.
Very good. The big picture for me has always been, and I emphasize it a lot, is the big picture is that there's a battle going on from the beginning of time, and part of what the human race is all about, and that is a contest between accepting something which a lot of people recognize, but they don't particularly follow, and that is natural law. Because in all societies, it's been recognized throughout history that there's a natural thing that happens to any people along the way, not always the same way and then piecemeal and all of that, is that basically the rules of nature know that it's good to have a society that believes that you shouldn't lie, cheat, steal, and kill, and that the world will be better off. And so that's a natural law, and the founders understood natural law, and they would always try to guide the Constitution in that direction. But subsequently, the enemy of the natural law, those who wrote laws and all, always wanted to diminish the emphasis on natural law and emphasize more the pessimism of nihilism. You guys are wasting your time. You keep talking about this, wonderful thing like sound money, all this stuff. It's all impossible. So they're nihilists and don't believe you can reach it, but they play games with it. They sound like they do, and they sort of brag on it, and they sort of use it as a tool, but they don't believe in it, and they believe more in the success of lying. And I think one party lies a lot better than the other party. That doesn't mean that that's the way it's always been, but right now I certainly do think that one party are professional liars. So now that they're on the defensive, since the Trump administration came into office, they are up against the wall and really are getting scared and very annoyed. And I think the opposition party, the people who believe in nihilism, have the upper. They're on the defensive, but they are determined. They are willing. I think their lying capacity has not ended, and yet the things that we have learned by exposing, the system for the past 4 years, and what USA.net, USAID did, that I'll tell you, it's amazing that. That so much of that they got away with, and right now I think that they'll do everything plus now to try to restore their corrupt power. And the only thing I do is I caution them that there's no perfections out there, and there are some of the influences that we're challenged, unfortunately, are bipartisan. So we have to keep our eyes and ears open.
Very good, Dr. Paul. Yes, it is a bipartisan thing. I want to quote our favorite congressman, Thomas Massey. He wrote on X this morning, he said, DOGE is on a collision course with the uni-party. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm here for it, literally. And yes, he is, end quote. He's there for it. And as of today, we're seeing Democratic politicians are furious with DOGE because they went after the Democratic bread and butter first. What we hope for is that when this is all said and done, both sides, both Republican and Democratic politicians, are all furious with DOGE because this has been a uni-party situation. This isn't just the left, as great as it is to see because of all the damage they've done recently. This is a Republican thing too. And we hope that DOGE goes into the defense, into the war party state, into the empire. We have 1,000 bases peppered all over the earth. I mean, you want to talk about waste. Hopefully that's on the menu. And then we'll have both sides furious with DOGE. And if that happens, we will know that it has been a job well done for the American people.
Over the years, I've tried to make the point that our problems are almost always bipartisan, or they wouldn't be passed. And what I use as an example, if there wasn't any of this bipartisanship, why would we be in these wars without declarations? Why would we be spending this money and running up with the death? And why do they not, read the Constitution about monetary policy? So it has, over these decades, or longer. It's been bipartisan, especially since the establishment of the Federal Reserve. It was the two parties coming together and tolerating it and allowing this mischief to occur, which means that if the government wants to expand for whatever reason, no sweat, we'll tax and talk about it and put on regulations, but we won't have to really worry, because if you have a control of the monetary system, you just counterfeit it. It's fraud, and they do it. And if you're a rich country and happen to own the reserve currency of the world, you could do it for a long time, but that long time is not the bursting, but the building and the blowing up of a bubble, which eventually bursts. So this bipartisanship I see as over the many years. But right now we have a challenge to this, and in a way, we want those investigating to be bipartisan too, and that is look at both sides of it. And Chris mentioned this already. You got to look at both sides, because in a way it was built that way, so it isn't going to be unique. 10 people in one party, they were able to control this. So it's sort of a conditioning, and probably USAID and other things where the government controlled the media, got the people to go to sleep. Oh yeah, you can do that, but you're going to have to cut back on your Social Security and all that scare us. What about a war? They're about ready to invade us. We have to go scare people to death. And this is something that I think that is we seem to have a chance maybe to wake up the people, because even as though we aim our target at the politicians and those in office, who's in the Federal Reserve and all, but it is an attitude. It's a philosophic attitude, and I love the statement that was made a long time ago that if it's an idea whose time has come, ideas are so powerful you can't stop it. And I think of our revolution to start our country. It was an idea whose time had come, and there were leaders to do that. And I think right now, let's hope what we're seeing here, the part that we like, what's going on, I hope this all represents an idea that is prevailing and getting noticed by more people. And I would say that part has started, and before the election, it was, yes, you guys are talking about it, but nobody's in office. Now I think we can say we have Thomas Massey and others, but I think the people have to wake up. I think the people got sick and tired of COVID and all that polygenderism and all that nonsense, which is the stuff that Trump ran on. So I would say that attitude is changing, and I hope for our sake that the positive attitudes that we like will survive, and that even an army can't stop us. And I think of armies as those who are filled with an energy about promoting the cause and the purpose of living in a free country.
Excellent, Dr. Paul. I'll finish up with my closing statement, and it's kind of to echo what Dr. Paul said earlier in the show about natural law. What DOGE is doing is great, but it's working on the effects. It's getting rid of the bad effects. We have to go to the cause, otherwise the bad effects will just return. And the cause is ideas, natural law. Government is not God, which is what it has tried to become, and as you see the effects. So our problem is not the big government itself. That's the effect. The problem is the ideas that lead to the big government. And when our country was started, that was one of the things I remember reading that John Adams talked about. He said, this is not going to work unless you have a moral people. And at the beginning, morality was a big part of American life. There's no doubt about it. You could read the state constitutions. You could just read anything from back then. And it was very clear that these were a moral people, not a perfect people, far from it. There is never a perfect people. But morality was a high priority, even though people are always imperfect. That has been stripped away. especially since the 1960s in America. And we have hopefully bottomed out because it was ugly, like Dr. Paul just mentioned, all this gender stuff. I mean, it was a total take anything that's true and just turn it upside down no matter what. I mean, that's the opposite of natural law and morality. So we have an opportunity to bounce from what has begun in the 1960s. Whether or not that happens, I hope it does, because then all of this cutting of government, it could remain for a while, and that's the best we can do while we're here. So we need to work on the causes, and the causes are always ideas.
Wonderful, Chris. We've talked about USAID a lot yesterday and today, and it's going to be in the news for a while because it's very significant, and the progress it makes has a lot to do with where we'll be in 2 or 5 or 10 years from now. And I got more optimistic in spite of the evil on government directing the COVID epidemic, so to speak, that at least woke up a lot of people to this. So there's been progress made. USAID's been exposed. USAID has been exposed. And people have starting to ask, why is it that the government's running our medicine? And if they ask the question, where do you get the authority for a government to control medicine like this? So we're moving in the right direction there. That has not yet been attacked in a significant manner yet, but it will be. So I think they're on the horizon, that we have to be willing to look into the monstrosities that occurred with government becoming the doctor. And if you don't get if you're a good doctor, you might lose your license for being a good doctor, and challenging the tyranny of a government-run medical system. Education, it's on the block right now, and I think the administration is addressing that, and it's serious. There is talk about monetary policy, but let me tell you, I think they have a long way to go, because I think it's the most secretive, it's the most powerful, and nothing that we disapprove of either side in the last 50 years, ever since 1913, it could have happened without, dishonest money, where the insiders can print money when they need it and have conditions such where the people are deceived and think, well, that's good. That boosts the economy. We have jobs, and they never look at the downside. I think there's been progress made in the Department of Justice. Just think of the exposure coming out now. I think if we had all that information before, I think Trump would have been in office a lot sooner than he was, because the manipulation of the news and Department of Justice and all those lawsuits. But the neat thing there, the people woke up. They didn't believe it. They were lying so bad. They didn't believe it. So the jury was going to decide, and that was the election. And guess what the jury said? We found out. But there's another area that I would encourage DOGE to take a look at, because it's a big deal. It's a lot of money, and that is a reorientation of the empire. I don't think we should be in the empire business, and I don't think we have the money to do it. I think empires all add badly. That's how many great nations, including the Roman Empire, how they end. They get too bold and they spread their wings, and I think we're reaching that point. So I would urge anybody interested in shrinking the size of government, you can't totally ignore either the monetary system or the foreign policy of interventionism and maintaining an empire. You maybe argue, but that is our duty. We have a responsibility. We will promote good things. And certainly after our Constitution was written, there were quite a few countries that, wow, this looks good. We'd like to imitate what the Americans are doing. So, but right now, there's not enough emphasis on this. And I would like to I point out where I think we're making progress, but would urge the people to put the pressure on the people who are in office and can make some changes, especially in foreign policy and monetary policy, it would go a long way in the practical side of promoting the cause of liberty. That I hope we can do. That is something I believe can be done because societies have frequently gone through cycles where liberty and peace has been more emphasized than others, but there's too many times when the society has accepted for naive reasons the issue that you could use force and get the same stuff. Well, it doesn't work that way. Finally, the market catches up. That's what we're witnessing right now. Market forces are catching up with the immorality and the lack of common sense with our policies of the last 50, 60, 70 years. And it will come to a climax. So I suggest it's not difficult. Just understand what liberty is, what non-intervention is, and see what happens. Because the freer a country is, the more prosperous it is, and the more peace there is. I think that's a good idea. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.